More important things in life than getting rich. Health, for example, that's much more important. So is love and companionship. Some people would say that intellectual growth and peace of mind are more important. But I'm really not an expert on any of those things. I mean, my beat is wealth building. Listening to me talk about getting rich would be a little like having Pamela Anderson show you her stamp collection. But maybe I'm wrong. How many people here would like to hear me talk about intellectual growth and peace of mind? How about getting rich? All right. You know, I decided to get rich almost arbitrarily. It happened in two stages. The first time was in 1982 in Key Largo. I'd gone down there with my family to take a vacation. And to make the trip tax deductible, I took 3 job interviews. 2 were with the newspapers, were with the Miami Herald and the St. Petersburg Times. And the third was with an up-and-coming newsletter publisher based in Boca Raton. To my surprise, I got 3 job offers. And so I found myself on the shores of Key Largo wondering what I should do. There was the Miami Herald, maybe a good cub reporter job at the Miami Herald, a columnist position at St. Petersburg Times, and then it was Boca Raton, where I could start off in some kind of direct mail publishing company. I couldn't really figure it out, but I could clearly see that I had an opportunity. On the one side, there was a Pulitzer Prize waiting for me, and on the other side, there was a big bag of money. Since I couldn't make a decision, I decided to leave it to fate. There was a kid working there. He was about 16, long, bleach blonde hair, starry days in his eyes. His job in life was to fill up jet skis with fuel. That was the only thing he did all day. And I can tell you it was the only thing he was qualified to do. I decided to leave the decision in his hands. As he sat there looking at the surf, I explained my whole life to him, my whole working life, how I had been in the Peace Corps and traveled to Washington and got a job with a small publishing company there and had worked as far as I could with that business, but it was small and it didn't have opportunity. And now, two of the great things I wanted to do in life, being a writer or maybe being a writer and make some money, were out there and, you know, what should I do? And he just stood there for a moment looking at the ocean. In fact, it was such a long moment, I wondered if he had been listening to me at all. And then he took a long toke on the cigarette he was smoking, and he exhaled, and he lifted his head up and he said, "Boca, go Boca, man." And so I went to Boca, and I worked hard for a year for this publishing business. And after about, a little less than a year, I had to make a speech. And so I decided to enroll in the Dale Carnegie program for speech making. But somehow I ended up in the basic program, which is called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And this was a really marvelous program. It consisted of 14 weeks of different lessons. One lesson you would learn how to shake hands, another lesson you would learn how to remember things, and so on. In this lesson, it might have been the third lesson, the object was to learn how to set goals, to learn how to accomplish goals. And I remember reading in his book, Dale Carnegie said that for most people, the problem in achieving success is that they don't set goals. They don't have goals, or if they have them, they don't set them. If they set them, they don't write them down. There's been many studies that have proven this to be true. There's a famous study that Harvard did of Harvard graduates that showed that the Harvard students that never set goals in 10 years had exactly the same income as graduates from any other college in the country. Those that set goals had like a 30%, those that set them and wrote them down had 60% greater income, and those that set them and wrote them down and went back to them every day had like double or triple. So I bought into the idea that goal setting was important. But Dale Carnegie also said that for some people, the problem is that they have too many goals. That was my problem. I wanted to be a writer, a teacher, a poet, a philosopher, a black belt, a bodybuilder. I wanted to be the perfect specimen of male pulchritude. and I also wanted to be rich. So that was a tough week for me. The first object was to get it down to 4. And I had that 4 in mind. It was like a mantra running through my head. Writer, teacher, humanitarian, rich guy. All week, I thought, writer, teacher, humanitarian, rich guy. But by the time it came to give my little presentation, I had to choose one. And that was very difficult for me to do. In fact, all the way there in the car, and even as I was walking up to the lectern, I couldn't decide. Writer, teacher, humanitarian, rich guy, what could I do? Writer, teacher. And just as I was about to step in front of the podium, as I'm standing right now, and announce to the class that I had failed, I couldn't decide. A thought hit me. The thought was, what the hell? You can give the money back if you don't like it. It was like an angel had whispered to me. An angel from Saks Fifth Avenue. Well, I wonder how many people here have that problem. How many people here have more than one goal? You, ma'am, you're right up front. What's your name? Joanne. What goals do you have? Tell me a few of your goals. Mm-hmm. Fiction writer, a copywriter, okay. I had both of those. Go ahead. Great mom and wife. Those are four pretty good. Who else had? Come on, somebody else. You, sir. What's your name? George. Oh, I remember you from before, George. You've been here, haven't you? Maybe in spirit. You've been communicating with me telepathically, perhaps.
Anyway, getting my goal. Basically, I have several different levels. How to improve my service to my clients and perpetuate my business that way. How to grow my business overall. How to create more business.
Now, you're not going to try to take over this speech, are you? You're not going to try to take over this speech. So perpetuate your client.
And basically, then on a personal side, I lost my wife 2 years ago, so obviously I'm working my soul side. And my children. So basically, I have different levels of goals, and I have things that I want to achieve at all of them.
Okay.
Plus the fact that I'm probably pretty close to retirement.
There you go. Well, I think this is true of a lot of ambitious people, that we have many goals. And for me, it really was a problem. But even though the way I got to making that decision that day was arbitrary, and it was, there were two, I arbitrarily ended up in Boca Raton, more or less. I left it to fate, and I had this angel whisper in my ear at the last moment. It really changed my life that day. It changed the way I thought about getting wealthy. And I think that the reason it changed my life was because of the way Dale Carnegie structured that lesson. I think there were 3 elements to it. We've all made decisions and not followed through on them. In fact, every January 1st, we usually go through that ritual, don't we? And even though that I talk to you all the time about goal setting, and I'm a big advocate of following through, and you all know that, I still make promises to myself all the time I don't keep. I'm going to smoke. I'm only going to smoke 1 cigar this week. Just on weekends. Now my rationale is, well, I got it to 2, but the one I save for the weekend, and the other I smoke during the week. But what I do is I get a really big cigar. And this is why I really do this. And I put it by my desk, and every day after lunch, because that's when I really want to smoke, I light it up. And I can smoke it. I got it down to about 11 or 12 minutes every day, and then by the end of the week, it's gone. So that's how I only smoke 2 cigars. Anyway, I think it really made a big difference because there were 3 things I did. I made a formal declaration. I stood in front of a group of people and I said, I'm going to get rich. Then the other thing was that I had to make it my number 1 priority. And I think this is very critical. When you make something your number 1 priority, it means that all your other priorities have to take second place to it. It's a very, very profound thing to do in your life. And I had never done it before, never even, I passionately wanted to do the 10 things I wanted to do, but I never made one a number one priority. That had a dramatic effect on me. And the third thing was that the rule was that after you announced it, the next week and all the weeks thereafter, which were about 10 weeks, you would report to the class on how you were doing.